There's a pretty fundamental question at the center of this hearing. When America is choosing people for critical positions, should the first consideration be who someone is or what someone can actually do? And that's exactly what makes this exchange worth watching. The speaker isn't arguing that diversity itself is bad. In fact, he openly acknowledges serving alongside people from very different backgrounds and says that diversity was a normal part of his military experience. His argument is about what should come first when selecting people for positions of responsibility, identity, or qualifications. Welcome back to the America Brief. If you appreciate straightforward political commentary without the shouting and partisan spin, make sure you subscribe, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Because this hearing raises a debate that goes far beyond one government office. And I think the answer matters for every American. Now, let's get into it.
I'm just going to start by responding to my colleague, who's somebody that I thank. I thank you for your service. If I can speak to you directly, I thank you for your service. Very proud to call you a brother in arms. But as I observe our units, we both served in diverse units in the military, but it was never by demand. And that is the argument that I'm bringing up here as we talk about service in the State Department or the military or anywhere else. There are no quotas over qualification. We didn't need an African American or an Asian or a white sniper or bomb tech or canine handler. It was just simply who raised their hand, volunteered, proved that they had what they needed to make it and be effective in that role, and pursued it and reached their goal. That's what it was all about. And to give the appearance at any time that it is anything other than that, that is un-American, and that is the problem I have with the appearance that this office is giving. I'll ask a couple of questions here. Is baldness, somebody that looks like me, does that make you a better diplomat, ma'am? I think I know the answer, but.
Not that I know of.
It doesn't. If somebody's 5'8" like me or 6'3" like somebody else, does it make them a better diplomat?
No, I do not believe so.
Likewise, does being white make somebody a better diplomat?
No, I do not believe so.
African American?
No, I do not believe so.
Asian or Islander?
Any specific group?
Native American? It doesn't. I would ask this. Can you tell me, am I white?
I would allow you to tell me how you characterize yourself.
That's exactly right. I would have to tell you not just how I characterize myself, but what I am. But I'm asking, do you know if I'm white?
I do not know.
Half black?
I do not know.
Asian, Islander?
Do not know.
Brown? Latino?
I do not know.
You can't know. You can't know without asking somebody to disclose what they are. And we can't ask what somebody is, and it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter that I'm half Mexican. It shouldn't matter whether I'm able-bodied or ambulatory or not ambulatory. That doesn't have anything to do with what my background is, that I served in these operations in the military, that I gained these skills, that I studied this in school, that I proved that I could pass whatever tests under stress and duress and be effective in the field under situations that foreign service officers might encounter, like the withdrawal of Afghanistan, the enemy at the gates, people being targeted, trying to deal with countless number of SIVs coming in. That has nothing to do with how somebody looks. It has to do with, did they volunteer to do this? Do they have the skills to do this? Did we test them to make sure they had the skills to do this? Do we hire hard and have the ability to manage a little bit easier? And that's the problem with what I see with what's taking place here. I'd ask you another question. Can you tell me what best looks like?
I'm not sure I'm fully understanding what you're getting at.
What does the best candidate look like?
Yeah.
The best FSO officer, we'll use that, the best foreign service officer. What does the best look like?
I would say the best for the particular job can look like any one of us, and that is the American way. That's what we support.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So in that, we can't have it be that first we look for a diverse basket of candidates, as is your quote, and then after we look for the diverse basket, then we check the merit of that. The diversity can't be the number one. I want a diverse workforce. I'm glad that I served with a diverse force in the military, diverse colleagues as members of Congress. But that can't be the number one filter because it does create an inherent bias, an inherent quota system where people look at it and say, well, I wasn't this. I didn't have the right religion or color or what they were looking for. So I didn't make that diverse basket number one, as you said, that it has to be that. They better bring you a diverse panel. My time has expired.
The first thing that caught my attention here is that the speaker starts by talking about his military experience. And I think that's important because he's not making this argument from the perspective of somebody who has never worked in a diverse organization. He's essentially saying, I've been there. I've served with people from different racial and ethnic backgrounds. I worked alongside people who looked different from me, and none of that was a problem. But then he makes an important distinction. He says that in the military, diversity wasn't something that had to be manufactured by demanding a particular racial or ethnic combination in every unit. People volunteered, they trained, they were tested, they demonstrated that they could perform the job, and then they earned their positions. Now, whether you completely agree with that characterization or not, I think the underlying principle deserves serious consideration. If you're selecting someone for a job where lives, national security, diplomacy, or the reputation of the United States could be on the line, shouldn't competence be absolutely essential? And I think most Americans, regardless of political party, would say yes. But here's where this discussion gets more complicated, because there's a difference between saying qualifications should matter and saying diversity should never matter. Those aren't necessarily the same argument. There are legitimate reasons why an organization might want to recruit from a broad range of backgrounds. A government that serves an entire country should ideally be able to attract talented people from every part of that country. And a diverse workforce can bring different experiences, perspectives, languages, and cultural knowledge to the table. That's not inherently anti-American. At the same time, there's a legitimate concern if an applicant's race, sex, ethnicity, religion, or some other characteristic becomes more important than whether that individual can actually perform the job. And that's the tension we're hearing in this exchange. The speaker asks a series of questions that are deliberately simple. Does being bald make you a better diplomat? Obviously not. Does being 5'8" make you better than somebody who's 6'3"? Of course not. Does being white make you a better diplomat? No. Does being African American make you a better diplomat? No. Does being Asian, Native American, Latino, or any other particular background automatically make someone better at diplomacy? Again, no. And I think the point he's trying to make is that identity alone doesn't establish competence. That's an important point. But there's another side of this conversation that we shouldn't ignore. A person's background doesn't automatically make them qualified, but it can sometimes give them experiences that are relevant to the work they're being asked to do. Imagine, for example, a diplomat who speaks a particular foreign language fluently because they grew up speaking it. That doesn't make them inherently better than another candidate. But if the position requires that language, their experience could be a legitimate qualification. Or imagine somebody who has spent years working in a particular region of the world and understands its political culture, history, and social dynamics. Again, that's not about giving somebody a job because of their ethnicity. That's about recognizing relevant experience. So the real question shouldn't simply be, does diversity matter? The better question is, what exactly are we using diversity to accomplish, and how much weight does it have compared with merit? That's where I think this hearing gets interesting. The speaker points out that the official he's questioning described the goal as looking for a diverse basket of candidates, and then evaluating their qualifications. And he pushes back. His concern is that if diversity becomes the first filter, the process can potentially create a different kind of unfairness. Now, we should be careful here. Having a diverse pool of candidates does not automatically mean that there is a quota. Those are two different things. An organization can deliberately make sure that it reaches talented candidates from a wide variety of communities without guaranteeing that a certain percentage of positions goes to one demographic group. Recruiting broadly and selecting based on qualifications can coexist. The concern becomes more serious if candidates are being evaluated differently because of their identity. And that's really the heart of the argument. Suppose you have 10 applicants for a highly important government position. You establish the qualifications before looking at the applicants. You test their knowledge. You examine their experience. You assess their ability to perform under pressure. You interview them. You look at their judgment and integrity. And then you select the strongest candidate. That's a pretty straightforward merit-based system. But suppose instead you begin with a demographic target and then work backward to find people who fit that target. Now you're potentially putting identity ahead of qualifications. That's where people can reasonably start asking questions about fairness. And there's another issue here that I think gets overlooked in political arguments about diversity. People don't want to feel like they're being reduced to a demographic category. The speaker makes this point when he says that his background shouldn't determine whether he can perform a job. And I think there's something deeply American about that idea. The ideal is that your ancestry doesn't determine your destiny. You shouldn't be told that you're automatically more qualified because you're white. You shouldn't be told that you're automatically less qualified because you're white. You shouldn't be automatically favored because you're Latino. You shouldn't be automatically disadvantaged because you're Latino. The same principle should apply across the board. Your identity can be part of who you are without becoming the measurement of your worth. And I think that's a distinction worth making. Because sometimes political debates become so polarized that one side hears merit and assumes the person is attacking diversity, and the other side hears diversity and assumes the person is attacking merit. Neither interpretation necessarily follows. You can believe in equal opportunity and believe that institutions should make a serious effort to reach qualified people from all communities. You can believe that discrimination is wrong and believe that government jobs should ultimately be awarded based on who can do the job best. Those principles don't have to contradict each other. And frankly, that's where I think the conversation needs to go. Instead of asking whether someone is the right race or background, why not ask whether the selection process is transparent? What are the qualifications? Were those qualifications established before the candidates were evaluated? Were the same standards applied to everybody? Were candidates judged according to their abilities? And if diversity was considered, what exactly did that mean? Did it mean recruiting broadly? Did it mean ensuring that qualified candidates weren't overlooked? Or did it mean setting numerical targets? Those questions are much more useful than simply throwing around accusations of racism or discrimination. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about government positions. These aren't reality television contests. These aren't popularity contests. And they shouldn't be political trophies. The person representing the United States abroad has a responsibility to represent the country effectively. The person handling national security has to be capable of handling national security. The person making decisions during a crisis needs to be able to make good decisions during a crisis. And the person responsible for a difficult mission needs to be able to perform that mission. That's why the speaker keeps coming back to his military experience. He's saying that when people were being selected for specialized military jobs, the important question wasn't what they looked like. It was whether they could do the job. Could they pass the test? Could they perform under pressure? Could they handle the responsibility? Could they be trusted? Those are powerful standards. But there's also something else we need to remember. Military selection isn't exactly the same thing as every civilian government hiring process. Different institutions have different missions. A foreign service officer, for example, may need diplomatic skills that aren't measured in the same way as military skills. And government agencies can legitimately consider a broad range of qualifications, including language abilities, regional knowledge, professional experience, and the ability to communicate with different populations. So we shouldn't oversimplify this. The strongest version of the argument isn't ignore diversity. The strongest version is don't let diversity become a substitute for competence. And on the other side, the strongest argument isn't hire people because of their identity. It's don't allow unconscious bias, outdated networks, or narrow recruiting practices to prevent qualified Americans from getting a fair opportunity. Those two principles can exist at the same time. And frankly, I think that's where most Americans probably are. Most people don't care if the person sitting across the table from them is black, white, Latino, Asian, Native American, male, female, tall, short, or anything else. They want to know whether that person knows what they're doing. They want to know whether that person earned the position. They want to know whether the person is trustworthy. They want to know whether that person will make good decisions when things go wrong. That's particularly important when we're talking about American representatives serving overseas. Because if an American diplomat is dealing with a crisis, negotiating with a foreign government, evacuating Americans, or responding to a rapidly changing situation, nobody should be asking, what demographic category does this person belong to? They should be asking, can this person handle the situation? And I think that's the principle the speaker was trying to drive home. But I also think it's important that we don't turn this into another political shouting match where one side says merit and the other says diversity, and everybody walks away angry. America is a diverse country. That's simply reality. And there's nothing wrong with wanting talented Americans from every community to have an opportunity to serve. The problem comes when the country starts treating people primarily as representatives of racial or demographic categories rather than as individuals. And that's where the phrase, the best candidate, becomes so important. What does the best candidate look like? The answer should be potentially anybody. The best candidate could be black. They could be white. They could be Latino. They could be Asian. They could be Native American. They could come from a wealthy family or a poor one. They could be from a big city or a small town. What matters is whether they have the qualifications, judgment, character, experience, and ability required for the job. That's what equal opportunity should mean. Not equal outcomes regardless of qualifications. Not giving somebody an advantage because of their ancestry, and not putting artificial barriers in front of someone because they don't fit a preferred demographic. Give people a genuine opportunity. Set clear standards. Make those standards known. Let people compete, and then reward excellence. That's a system that can command public trust. And I think public trust is ultimately what this debate is really about. Because when Americans believe that government positions are being filled based on competence and fairness, they can accept the outcome even when their preferred candidate doesn't get the job. But if people start believing that the system is rigged around identity, connections, political loyalty, or demographic targets, trust begins to disappear. And once trust disappears, it becomes much harder for government institutions to function effectively. That's why I think this hearing deserves more than the usual partisan reaction. There are legitimate questions on both sides. We should be able to acknowledge the value of a broad and inclusive pool of talent, while also insisting that qualifications remain central. We should be able to oppose discrimination without pretending that every demographic outcome has to be identical. And we should be able to talk about merit without treating diversity as something inherently suspicious. At the end of the day, the American ideal should be pretty simple. Give everyone a fair shot, set the same meaningful standards, and choose people based on their ability to meet those standards. That's a principle worth defending regardless of whether you're Republican, Democrat, independent, conservative, liberal, or somewhere in between. And personally, that's where I land on this. I don't want a government filled with people who were selected because they checked the correct demographic box. But I also don't want a government where qualified people are overlooked because the system never gave them a fair opportunity to compete. I want the best people, and I want everyone to have a fair chance to prove that they are the best. That's the balance I think this debate is missing. And that's why this exchange is worth paying attention to. Because beneath all the political arguments about diversity, race, hiring, and representation is a question that affects every American. When your government puts someone in a position of enormous responsibility, do you want that person there because of who they are or because they proved what they can do? I think the answer should be obvious, but I'd like to hear what you think. Was the speaker right to challenge the emphasis on a diverse basket of candidates? Or is there a legitimate role for diversity in making sure government institutions draw from the full range of American talent? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more political hearings, debates, and moments like this broken down without the usual partisan noise, subscribe to the America Brief, hit the like button, and turn on notifications. We'll see you in the next one.